I had occasion to drive down to Aptos last Tuesday afternoon. The traffic on Highway 17 was bad enough that Google Maps sent me on a detour through winding back roads of lovely redwood groves. I was headed to an assisted living facility to administer last rites for Frank, a parishioner just 2 days shy of his 102nd birthday. But when I arrived there, I found him not on his deathbed, but sitting out on the back patio, enjoying the sunshine, with 4 of his family members visiting from other parts of Northern California. Frank's health had improved in just 2 days. So his grandnephew and I quietly agreed to forego last rites and do a simple communion service. Gathered around the circular patio table, umbrella up for shade, I read them today's psalm and gospel reading. Then on the spot, I delivered this little sermon I'd now like to share with you, because I think its message applies at whatever age or proximity to death we are. I love this morning's Psalm 98, because it's one of those where nature is anthropomorphized or given human characteristics to show how much all of creation delights in God. Let the sea make a noise and all that is in it. Let the rivers clap their hands and let the hills ring out with joy before the Lord. You can kind of picture it and hear it, so it makes sense. The ocean's crashing waves thrusting upwards to the sky in praise of the Almighty. The river's rapids sounding like a round of applause, a standing ovation of delight in God's goodness. And the hills coming alive with the sound of music. Ringing out joy in the wind and in the bird song. These days, spring is blossoming all around us. While I was sitting with Frank and his family last Tuesday, we were surrounded by cherry blossom trees festooned with pretty white buds. I said to them, "You see these trees in bloom? Every blossoming of bush and tree is a burst of praise. Just like in Psalm 98, they are singing their love for God in their own language. So whenever you see flowers or fruit trees, baby squirrels or little birdies out and about in springtime, think of them all as nature's collective rejoicing in God's creation, taking part in one great Alleluia." And should you ever start feeling down or depressed, if you or a loved one is going through a hard time, health problems, mental challenges, the loss of a loved one, or general anxiety about life, like with Frank in Aptos and his near-death scare, try to remember to step outside yourself and take a look around. Walk to a park, get to the ocean, sit under a tree. Let nature remind you that God's love is everywhere, surrounding you, no matter how dire your circumstance. Now, I preach these Pollyanna words knowing full well that many of you are suffering through a terrible time. And our world, as usual, continues its slide into mayhem. A UN official with the World Food Program just declared parts of Gaza to be in full-blown famine, and it is spreading. Campus protests and arrests continue, both hopeful and distressing. And these are just the top news stories, the ones that get attention. Every Sunday could be a litany of the world's woes. But this Sunday I'm giving you a break and suggesting instead a source for solace. Even with all we're going through personally and doing to one another as human beings, the trees still stand witness. The breezes blow through it all, and the waters wend their course amongst it to their final destination. Rivers clap their hands alongside our trauma, providing an unspoken undercurrent of hope for new life. Our sadness and hardship is not irrelevant, but there is also and always joy. Tap into it whenever you can. Remember God's love in creation and how that includes you too. Nature is on my mind because it's Rogation Sunday, when we give thanks for God's creation. As William Bonnell writes in his e-news article from this week, Rogation days are traditionally devoted to prayer for all the world in its fragility, woundedness, and need, embracing the environment and those who dwell therein. These days are reminders that we do not exist in a vacuum of sorrow or self-absorption, but within an ecosystem of life. I lived in Somerville, Massachusetts for 5 months when I was 26 years old. It's adjacent to Cambridge and Boston. I was a mess, lost around questions of career and love, headed towards the reckoning of my Saturn return the next year. Bicycling through Harvard Yard on a hot summer day with all these thoughts in my head, frustrated and anxious, suddenly in my upset, I got overwhelmed and had to jump off my bike, throw it down to the ground, and plop myself onto the grass. I started sobbing, the heaving kind, curled up against all these voices insisting I was a loser. After a while, I turned around to lie face upwards to the sky. Young people walked past me thinking who knows what about the weirdo on the lawn. I found I was under a tree. There was a breeze. Some time passed. Then, as my tears subsided, I began to notice how the leaves of the tree were fluttering high up above me, the wind blowing through them. As I watched them, I gradually felt like they were watching me back, regarding me from on high. And then I heard them, wind whisper to me, "Shh, quiet now. Everything is going to be all right. Shh, it's okay." And this filled my soul with a sense of overwhelming peace. After some time, I started smiling. Shortly after, I got up, retrieved my bicycle, and went on riding. That was God. And God regards us, finds us in these funny ways, and accompanies us, often when we need it most. Today's gospel reading continues last week's theme of love. Love one another as I have loved you, Jesus says. I have called you friends, and I have appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. Again, not to deny life's hardships, not to pretend we haven't completely mucked it up. But if anything is going to save us, it is love. That's what Christ was and is, love personified. When it's rough going in your life, remember you are loved by God and by others, and that matters a lot. We throw around that word so much as Christians, love, 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 until it almost loses its power to affect us. But we are made for love in all its forms. And if life has backed you into a corner, come out swinging with love and affection. Look for it around you. Frank in Aptos was almost at death's door last Sunday, and his family traveled for hours to be with him, to surround and remind him that he is not alone, even at 101 years old. Seek out love when you're down. Give out love when you're up. I close with an image of Christ's love that I just heard in an audiobook. It's a memoir by the late Irish singer Sinead O'Connor called Rememberings. Among other things in her all too short life, Sinead was physically abused by her mother when she was a child, beaten and told she was worthless. This excerpt I'm going to read, while short, is a little intense. So I hope you're okay with my sharing it with you. I love Jesus because he appeared in my head one night when my mother had me on the kitchen floor. I was naked and I had cereal and powdered coffee all over me. My mother was saying all this scary stuff and I was curled up so she could kick me on my bottom. Suddenly, there Jesus was, in my mind, on a little stony hill on his cross. I never asked him to come, he just arrived. He had on a long white robe, and blood was flowing from his heart all the way down his robe, and down the hill, and onto the ground, and then onto the kitchen floor, and into my heart. He said he would give me back any blood my mother took, and that his blood would make my heart strong. So I just focused on him. When my mother was finished with me, I lay on the floor until I knew she had closed her bedroom door. Then I tidied up all the stuff she'd thrown about and set the table for breakfast. Even in your darkest hour, you are not alone. You did not choose Christ, but Christ chose you. We are accompanied in so many ways, known and unknown, seen and unseen. We are regarded. We are loved. Remember that when you need it. Let nature's rejoicing all around us remind you. Think of all those who love you and want your joy too. Frank did indeed make it to his 102nd birthday last Thursday, and his grandnephew sent photos of balloons festooning Frank's bed, and of their visit to the ocean, where they all sat on a bench and pondered the tides. As I smiled at these pictures, I remembered how Frank's family has never called him by that name, Frank. They've always called him Bud, or Uncle Bud. May we also bud, blossom, and bloom in our own time, rejoicing in the knowledge that we are loved by our Creator God.